Welcome to All Theory, No Conspiracy. Don't forget to like, subscribe, click to receive notifications, and leave a comment. This video is all about adding a new perspective on the death of Jimi Hendrix. The long-standing official story has been challenged over the years by evidence which suggests a much different ending to the story as it was established in 1970. Let's take a walk together, shall we? Jimi Hendrix was born Johnny Allen Hendrix on November 27, 1942 in Seattle, Washington. His name was later changed by his father to James Marshall Hendrix when he was 4 years old. Young Jimi Hendrix lived a very unsettled life as a child as a result of frequent breakups and reconciliations of his parents, and the placement of his siblings in foster care. Jimi's family was very poor, and he was often sent to live with various family members in Seattle and Vancouver, BC. When Jimi was 12 years old, a social worker petitioned the school he attended for money from a fund set aside to aid children in need to buy Jimi a guitar. She felt he might be psychologically damaged if he didn't get one. The reason she felt so strongly about this was because she had often seen Jimi carrying a broom with him that he was pretending was a guitar. Her request was denied by the school. Jimi started getting into trouble as a teen and appeared before a judge on charges of joyriding and theft. He was given the choice of either incarceration or joining the military. He chose military. His father, Al Hendrix, had served in the military. Jimi Hendrix joined the 101st Airborne Division. He became a paratrooper on November 8, 1961. After having his guitar shipped to him, he played in a small musical group with other servicemen, including bass player Billy Cox, who would eventually join Jimi in the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jimi was discharged on June 29, 1962, when a superior wrote a letter requesting his discharge, suggesting that Hendrix was not cut out to be military personnel. Jimi began a career performing gigs as a sideman with various musical acts. In 1962, after Billy Cox was also discharged, Jimi and Billy relocated to Nashville, where they played in a group called the King Casuals. Jimi eventually relocated to Harlem in New York City in late 1964. In New York, Jimi Hendrix won first place at an amateur showcase at the famed Apollo Theater and played with many groups, including the Isley Brothers and Little Richard, both of whom he recorded songs with. After having fallen out with a few band leaders and bands that he was a sideman, in 1965, Jimi made his way to Greenwich Village, where he formed a group called Jimmy James and the Blue Flames. It was while playing in this band in 1966 that he was discovered by Chaz Chandler. Chaz was the bass player for the Animals, and at that time was looking to branch out into management and music production, and quickly signed the talented Hendrix to a contract. Upon relocating to London in late 1966, Jimi changed the spelling of his first name to J-I-M-I, and the name quickly spread around the British music scene. Guitarists like Eric Clapton, Jeff Beck, and Pete Townshend, as well as members of both the Rolling Stones and the Beatles, were soon in awe of Jimi's playing and showmanship. Jimi and Chaz Chandler set out to create a musical group of which Jimi would be the featured player. They recruited Noel Redding to play bass and John Mitch Mitchell to play drums in what would come to be known as the Jimi Hendrix Experience. Jimi's popularity quickly grew to superstar status. His albums Are You Experienced?, Axis Bold as Love, and Electric Ladyland were critical and financial successes, with sold-out concert tours all over the world, which included famous stops at the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967 and Woodstock in 1969. In the last year of his life, Jimi had been trying to get out of his contract with his manager, Mike Jeffrey. Among other things, Jimi wanted to play with other musicians, which Jeffrey frowned on, as it was in his best interest to keep the experience going, as it was the most lucrative situation. Along with being forced to regroup the experience after Noel Redding had left, Jimi felt that Jeffrey had interfered with other projects he had been working on, including the Band of Gypsies that he had formed with Billy Cox and Buddy Miles. There was also a strange kidnapping incident involving Jimi, where it was assumed by some that it was Jeffrey who arranged it. It has also been revealed that prior to Jimi's death, Michael Jeffrey had taken out a life insurance policy on Jimi that was worth $1.25 million, a substantial sum in 1970. Jimi spent much of September 17, 1970, in London with a girl he was seeing named Monika Danneman. Danneman said that she prepared a meal for them at her apartment in the Samarkand Hotel at around 11 p.m., and they shared a bottle of wine. She drove him to see a friend at 1:45 a.m., then she picked him up and drove them back to her flat at 3 a.m. She said they were awake until 7 a.m. the morning of the 18th. Danneman says she awoke at around 11 a.m. and found Hendrix breathing, but unconscious and unresponsive. She called for an ambulance at 11:18 a.m. Jimi was transported to St. Mary Abbott's Hospital, where he was pronounced dead at 12:45 p.m. on September 18, 1970. The coroner's inquest was completed on September 28th and concluded that Hendrix aspirated his own vomit and asphyxiated while intoxicated with alcohol and barbiturates. Citing insufficient evidence of the circumstances, it was declared an open verdict. However, the ambulance attendants who arrived on the scene described entering an apartment where the only person present was a deceased black male. He was described as fully clothed and lying on a bed. He had vomited excessively, and when they moved him to place him on a gurney, red wine spilled out of his mouth. "There was wine everywhere," said Dr. Bob Brown, who was involved in Hendrix's treatment. "He was dead and had been for some time. A large amount of red wine was found in his lungs, but only a limited amount of alcohol was found in his blood and urine tests." Jimi also had the remnants of at least 9 Vesperax sleeping pills in his system when 1/2 of a Vesperax is recommended. It's doubtful he knowingly took all of those pills himself. The Vesperax belonged to Danneman, and there were still 15 tablets left from the package of 24. Eric Burdon of the Animals had suggested his death was self-induced, but that would likely have involved taking all 24 pills. The fact that Jimi's clothes were soaked in red wine and his lungs contained wine makes it appear as though he was lying down while consuming most of it. Jimi had an excessive amount of barbiturates in his system. It does not make sense that he would then lie down and consume wine and continue to consume it while vomiting. It seems as though the wine may have been forced into his system while he was incapacitated by the Vesperax. Kathy Etchingham, a former girlfriend of Jimi's, had investigated Danneman's claims and found troubling inconsistencies. Danneman also changed details regarding the circumstances of Jimi's death as more details began to emerge. Etchingham long suspected foul play in Jimi's death, and that Danneman was a suspect. Danneman died of self-inflicted carbon monoxide poisoning at age 50 in Seaford, East Sussex. She had lost an ongoing court battle with Etchingham 2 days earlier. Etchingham had been suing her for repeated libel and won. It is generally accepted that Danneman chose to end her life rather than admit that her tales of her personal involvement with Jimi were largely fabricated, and to avoid answering questions about what really happened on the day that Jimi died. It appears that Monika did not want to face the music. Links to articles regarding Jimi's death and to a video documentary about his last day alive will be in the description of this video. The end? Stay tuned for more content from All Theory, No Conspiracy. Thank you for watching.